Everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Divi Nation. This is a brand new podcast and YouTube show by Elegant Themes, a leader in the premium WordPress theme and plugin development market. I'm your host, Nathan B. Weller, and I'm here to facilitate as much Divi-related awesomeness as possible. Divi, of course, is Elegant Themes' flagship product. It's a smart theme, it's a flexible theme, it's soon to be re-released as a separate builder plugin that you can use with any theme. We think it's pretty special, and it's got an awesome community growing up around it, which is why we're launching this podcast. We've got a great first episode for you today, but first, a quick note on the Divi Nation name. I hope you guys like it as much as we do because you came up with it. Specifically, it was an Elegant Themes blog reader named Brian who commented on our post announcing the show, saying, "Come on, you guys have to call the podcast Divi Nation, am I right? I mean, Wikipedia, divination, from the Latin divinare, to foresee, to be inspired by a god." Well, I mean, there you have it, folks. It's hard to argue with a cool Latin reference. And as it turns out, enough other commenters on that post agreed with Brian that we put it on a short list of names to be sent back to the team at Elegant Themes for consideration. And in the end, we all felt that Divi Nation had a lot going for it, and so here we are. The topic we're exploring today is successful solopreneurship with Divi. What does that mean? Well, for me, success is not what most people have in mind when they think of the word success in the most popular sense, particularly in America. I don't associate success with making the big bucks. That is a form of success, certainly, but probably not the kind of success that is open and accessible to everyone who jumps into the WordPress world and starts using Divi. For me, in that context, entrepreneurial success means that you had an idea, you ran with it, and as a result of that, you carved out a living for yourself where there wasn't one before. The key word there is living. It's the kind of sustainable living that you can depend on to pay your bills, to help you meet the other responsibilities in your life. That to me is success. And I really believe that one of the cool things we're seeing with the Divi community is that that kind of success is available to anyone working with WordPress and Divi today. What that means when we talk about our topic today of successful solopreneurship with Divi is that we're actually talking about using a combination of WordPress, Divi, and your own personal toolbox of knowledge, skills, and experience to build a sustainable living. To help us explore this topic today, we've got a really special guest with us. She's the guest host of the very first episode, so I'm very proud to announce that we've got Eileen Lonergan with us today. Eileen is a solopreneur who uses WordPress, Divi, and her own unique background and skill set to run a successful business out of her home in Boston, Massachusetts, consisting of web design, internet marketing, WordPress coaching, and more. She's also the founder of the Divi Theme Users Facebook group, a group that she has grown to over 5,000 members and counting. She's also the co-founder of the growing website, elegantmarketplace.com. That site's not officially affiliated with Elegant Themes, by the way. That website is geared specifically towards selling child themes and plugins that complement Elegant Themes Divi. Eileen, welcome to Divi Nation.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here, Nathan. I'm so honored to be the first guest.
Glad. Did I miss anything in the introduction? Did I cover all the big bases?
You did. That was wonderful. Thank you.
It's good. I didn't want to mess up my very first guest intro.
You nailed it. You did a great job.
So how are you this morning? What's going on in Boston?
It is so pretty here today. We're right on the water, and it's just a nice breeze, and it's perfect for golf or sailing or swimming or running.
Yeah, you're a golfer, right? I think I've seen some updates of yours where I'm not available right now. I'm out on the course.
Actually, I am a watcher.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I play. It's an embarrassment to myself and anybody who really does play golf to call my game qualified. But I've been out there watching my daughter, just driving the cart, following her along. And I like to play, but I'm in need of improvement.
Well, hey, we all got our hobbies, and that's what they are. They're there for fun. They're for leisure and enjoyment.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you could join us today. I'm also really glad that we're both on Eastern Standard Time because I love the idea of like waking up in the morning, having coffee with somebody and talking shop. That's just like one of my favorite things to do. And the fact that we do it for like a show to get, it's just awesome to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've had my coffee already, so I'm out of water because I don't want to be too.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I'm an early
over.
bird. I got up and I was up at like 5:30 this morning. It's now, almost 11. So this is my second cup of coffee. I usually do two in a row, and I was like, I'm going to want one while we talk. So
While we chat, I know, I appreciate that. And I have lots of latte, iced coffee references in my posts and over in the Divi group. If it's like a slow afternoon, I'll say, afternoon chat. Here's our virtual cup of coffee. So I'm with you.
All right. Are you ready to get started today?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do this.
Okay, bring it on.
So I'd like to begin by having you tell us your story. I think it's extremely helpful, particularly for those who find themselves on the outside or on the fringe, or maybe just getting started in the WordPress and Divi community looking in. A lot of people may be wondering if they have what it takes to make this world their world. And so I think it's really helpful to hear from a wide variety of people who've already made that journey, who started from the outside, worked their way in, and they've now established something for themselves. So to that end, can you maybe begin by telling us about your background, where you're from, where did you go to school, what did you do before working with WordPress, that sort of thing?
Okay, so I guess, now that we're on a show together and we're buddies, I can put out there that I grew up in Michigan, and I know you're in Columbus, so we have that, now we're a brotherhood in Big Ten, right?
We can go beyond our football differences.
Okay, good. So I went to school in Michigan, and I graduated from Michigan State University with a degree in advertising. So I really and truly am outside of, WordPress and website building, because when I got my degree, it wasn't an option I could have been a computer science major, but I wrote a program in high school to check out a library book. And honestly, I was fearing that I wouldn't graduate because of the coding, just like all the semicolons. Right. And, so to your point, I absolutely came from the outside because it didn't exist. It wasn't an option for me. So I went into advertising, which I absolutely loved. And I worked in Boston as a media buyer. So just in case people aren't familiar with media buyer, there's somebody sitting in an office somewhere deciding what your product is and understanding your target market and then how to reach them through media. So at the time it was, network television, and it was magazines and newspapers and radio. And that was, maybe a little billboards here and there, but it was, very set amount of options, and based on their budget, it was even sort of more defined. So I spent a lot of time with target markets and understanding where to find people. And then I moved to Chicago, and I was a planner. So I wasn't actually doing the negotiating for the media. I was figuring out the plan for somebody else to buy. And then I moved to London, and I was a media analyst for advertising in the UK.
Okay.
So that's sort of my advertising background. And then when I moved back to the States, I'm south of Boston, and I'm east of Providence. So commuting into Boston to do that media stuff just wasn't necessarily an option, and it wasn't really interesting to me. But I was lucky enough, a guy in my town owned 4 websites that he ran, and he needed somebody to do their AdWords. So I became a Google AdWords specialist, and immediately there was a click for me because I understood target markets and pricing and yada yada yada. So I started doing AdWords, and then he's, as a true entrepreneur does, sold those websites. But the pay-per-click people, that he had some pay-per-click clients as well, also in the golf industry. They came with me, and I set up a shop in my home. And I was also working with the local library just as a volunteer, and they wanted a website. And I don't really know why I thought I could build them a website, or why they thought I could build a website, but I did it for them in front page. It was very laborious and time consuming and frustrating. And once I did okay, it's up. And then they would say, we found you missed a period. I mean, they're librarians,
so they're
right?
they're proofreading you.
they're proofreading me, which of course they should be. And, in the first place, they even supplied most of the copies. So, they're like, oh, we missed it. Or I typed it wrong or whatever. And then you say, oh my gosh, I have to go through all of that again to just change something.
Yeah.
And it was sitting on my hard drive in my house. So I'd have to be at home in order to fix it. I couldn't just log in from being at the library and make a quick change like we can do now.
So what happened when, WordPress became a thing in 2006, but a lot of people didn't start using it right away because it was its own niche thing. It had just come out of it was forked from something else. So I know from our previous chats that you actually started with WordPress in 2008. What did WordPress look like in 2008, and what was your introduction to it like?
Right. Okay. So in 2000, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8, I got on Facebook. And at the time, there wasn't even a wall feed, and you couldn't, it didn't suggest, are you friends with so-and-so? So, you're kind of figuring out who people are. And I connected with a man I went to high school with named Don Campbell. And he put up a post one day that said, having lunch at the Googleplex. So I sent him a note, where are you? What are you doing? And because I really think I want your job, or I want to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So he said, well, let's set up a call. So I was like, oh my gosh, a call? Okay. So we get on the phone. We hadn't talked since we graduated from high school. So we get on the phone, and he says to me, I'm using WordPress and I developed a theme. And I said, oh, that's so nice. But I made one website and I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to stick with this AdWords thing. And he said, well, if it comes up and you're asked to do another website, check out this WordPress. And if you buy my theme, I'm going to help you. And I was like, that is a golden offer to have, right? So lo and behold, somebody saw the library website, and it was a woman who has a bakery. And at the time, she was baking out of her house, and she was looking to grow her business. And I said, okay, I'll build you this website. I think he charged her $400, which, at the time for her was an investment. And at the time for me was I was psyched.
Yeah.
Somebody was actually paying me. And so I bought the theme, and Don and his partner Thomas, they were great. I think she already had GoDaddy or something, and they installed WordPress for me, and they installed the theme. And literally it was, I think you could have one widget with one sidebar. The menu option, it was within the pages. You had to say, I want this page at number 1, this page number 2, or something like that, and set them all up that way. And I remember I bought this flowered background. Her name is Flower Girls, and I bought this groovy pattern. And and to upload the background, I had to do FTP.
Yeah, yeah.
So I sort of knew about FTP from the front page upload. But, really and truly, I would spend as much time doing things through FTP as I would, looking sort of at the front end or the visual editor, where now, I never really do anything through FTP.
Obviously, when you got started, Divi wasn't around. Divi didn't come out till late 2014 or 2013, rather. And so when you got started, you said that you used your friend's theme. What other themes did you as you started taking more web jobs after that first or second client? Did you have a sort of set toolbox that you use, themes or things that you kind of built your burgeoning business off of?
Yeah, so I used my friend Don's theme, the Small Biz theme, a lot, and I used Thesis. Mm-hmm. And I built a whole bunch of sites on Thesis for a while, but that whole unhook thing, I'm like, oh, this is a drag. And then I moved to Genesis, and I used Genesis, and based on the client and their needs, would sort of dictate or guide towards a theme. I used Woo themes,
Canvas, or just their,
Yep, and they had another one called Simplicity. And I used, I dipped into ThemeForest a couple times, but those I've really and truly found through like dabbling, there's always a learning curve. So if you have a client that you can, that has certain needs, certainly pick a theme that's best for that client. But if a client is kind of flexible, or you suddenly start seeing yourself doing a lot of websites for dentists or something, then using the same theme as a business owner really is helpful, because there's communities around themes that are helping one another. And we use the word solo, and I am, for the most part, I built my business by myself, but absolutely you need a team. And it could be your team that you're actually 1099ing at the end of the year, or it could be your team of just sole supporters, or like people that you're chatting. You need a community. So I tended to use things where if I was stuck, somebody could help me, or if I'd figured something out, I could help somebody else. So I I've tried a bunch of themes, but I always tell people, if they're trying to get started or figuring it out, use something where you can get support, pay the extra whatever it is for the support, and because you're going to have questions. I mean, I've got a blog that now has 401 posts, and a lot of it is just problem solving, and they seem silly in the time.
But people use it. People look it up and they're like, "Oh, I had that same problem." And all of a sudden, before you know it, you got a community, which is a topic we'll get back to. In the meantime, I think it's obvious at this point. I mean, I don't know if you do use other themes, depending on client, but it seems that at this point you've kind of hitched your business to Divi to a large extent. What did that process look like, and how has it changed the way you do things?
It was a member of a group that I belong to called the Expand to Web Experts, and he gave me a ring and he said, "I just found this theme. It's called Divi, and I think you would like it." So it just kind of coincided with, I had a woman who wanted a blog, and so I said, "Okay, I'm going to use it for her." And when I first started using it, it was March of last year, so 2014. So there were
literally just over a year. Yeah, just a couple months over a year.
Yeah. So there were still things to figure out. I still had to use CSS to change the font size. And however, there were so many positives around that theme, around Divi and the page builder, before columns.
before the rows and columns.
Right before the rows and columns, and you'd put together a website and it would just be like all over the place. And then Kenny Singh is such a beautiful designer,
front end and back end. The user experience design is unreal. I mean, like, as someone who's used a ton of other themes, I'm constantly blown away by how user friendly it is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I'm fortunate in that I seem to just get client after client. And so I had this woman who needed a blog, and so I was like, "Oh, okay, I can use it for this." And then suddenly there was a landscaper, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this will work for this." And then all of a sudden there was a, who's the next one? Like a school, like they needed something. And so it just like had all these applications around different, an interior designer. So, like really different needs, and it worked for all of them. And the sites, as somebody who builds a lot of sites, you don't want them all to look the same because you get bored. The dentist that you design for in Minneapolis and the other one in Texas, they don't really care.
They're not going to see each other's sites. Their clients aren't going to visit each other's sites. So.
Right. So you could, in essence, like kind of put the same thing out there, but to keep yourself engaged. And I just found so many different creative ways to keep me interested in trying new things and learning new things. I thought it was
what did it do for the scope of the work that you were capable of accomplishing?
It totally provided a whole new boon of creativity. It just looks so pretty, and it's easy to, you can have the header on the left, you can have the header in the middle, you can have the navigation on either side of your logo, you can easily, create all the layouts. And one of the things that I totally suggest for people who are new is just preload one of those layouts in there. Okay.
Preload and just start playing around. I mean, it's amazing how quickly a page can come together when you have a starting point.
Exactly. And I found it really easy to communicate with clients because I could say to them, here's a layout. We can change this up, but I'm going to need text here. I'm going to need images here. And, maybe we can have icons here. So let's talk about, what you need. And for a lot of clients, they need to see it. Even if they say to you, I'm an audio learner, or, I'm not so visual as you. Once they see it, they get an idea. Right. And then they can say, this is what we need. So it helps when you're saying to somebody who's taking the pictures or writing the copy, or if you're doing that yourself, then you know what you need, and it just speeds up the process.
Speaking of cool things that you can do with Divi, now that we have Divi 2.4, that's only gotten more intense. And I keep telling people, and I haven't heard anybody say it's totally off, but I have an analogy that I really like now, which is that Divi 2.4 is like the Photoshop of WordPress themes. There's so many settings, there's so many options. You can do just about anything, but now you have to learn how to navigate that. So we have a segment that is meant to specifically address this issue and help people become a little bit more familiar with the different tools and capabilities of Divi 2.4, and that's called Divi Quick Tip. So let's take a look at that real quick, and we'll get back, and instead of hearing your story, we'll dive into specifics of solo entrepreneurship, the elements of that and what that looks like, kind of pick your brain. So here it is, Divi Quick Tip. In this Divi Quick Tip, I'll be showing you how to create a blog post template using the Divi Builder and Divi library. In the days following the Divi 2.4 release, the team at Elegant Themes created 2 blog posts showing the amazing potential of the updated Divi Builder for bloggers. The first post focused on the amazing variety of visually stunning blog posts that can now be created with the Divi Builder. The second showed how global modules can be used to create a consistent design across all of your blog post titles. But many readers wanted to know, is it possible to use those same new features to create custom blog post templates so that you don't have to design each new Builder-powered blog post from the ground up? Thankfully, the answer is yes, and here's how. First, you're going to want to gather and organize your non-Divi related resources. You'll need a lorem ipsum text generator for quick and easy sample text. You're also going to need large, high-quality sample images and possibly some videos. I highly recommend using unsplash.com for your images, and of course YouTube for your video links. And finally, some editorial design inspiration. So you might try Googling something along the lines of editorial blog design and seeing if you can find a few examples that you can take your design cues from. Next, from within your WordPress admin, navigate to Posts, Add New. Type in a sample post title and then switch to the Divi Builder. If you've already followed Nick's Global Post Titles tutorial, then you will want to start by adding that module in right at the top of the post. After that, use your design references and sample content to start mocking up an ideal standard blog post. I've already done this in another tab, so I'll jump over there so you can see what I came up with. As you can see, I've created a long multi-section blog post with a lot of different modules. I've tried to label them accordingly so that when I use this template in the future, I'll know what each element is at a glance. On the front end, you can see the styling I've created using nothing but the Divi Builder section and module settings. At the top here, I have my global blog post title. Directly below that, you can see I've used the Monarch plugin to provide color-coordinated social sharing options as well, but that's a Monarch setting, not a Post Builder setting. Then the post itself begins. I have a slightly larger, more pronounced first paragraph to make my post opening stand out. I created an editor's note, body text, section headings, section subheadings, and in general, any element that I thought I would want or need in my average blog post in the future. I've got pull quotes, inline video, which could just as easily be inline image as well, a full width quote, and even an area here at the very bottom for listing my image credits. Now that I've got everything looking the way I want it to, I need to head back to the post editor and save this to the Divi library. So what I want to do now is click on the Save to Library option up here at the top of the Divi Builder. This will allow me to save the whole blog post layout I've just created in the same way that you can save page layouts with the Divi Page Builder. Now when I go to create a new blog post, all I have to do is go to the Load from Library option and choose the blog post template I've just created. As you can see, I now have a fully formatted Divi Builder blog post template to start from. Since all of my individual module settings were also saved as part of the layout, this template also works as an overall style guide that will help me keep a consistent look and feel across all of my blog posts. And yours will do the same for you. Well, that's it for this video. I'm Nathan B. Weller, and this has been an Elegant Themes Divi Quick Tip. Welcome back to the Divi Nation conversation with Eileen Lonergan. Earlier we heard Eileen's story, where she comes from, how she got started with WordPress. Now we're going to dive into more specifics about the topic, successful solopreneurship with Divi. We're going to talk about a number of different sort of subtopics and kind of drill down into the specific experiences and lessons that she can share from her experience with the rest of the community. So first up, we have the mentality of successful solopreneurship. Eileen, so thinking back to before you started working with WordPress, for those who are thinking of maybe making that transition themselves, what's maybe the biggest or most important shift in your mentality towards work in general that you've had to take, or that has had to take place for you to function in your role now?
You really need a lot of self-discipline because, if you're working for yourself, then you are accountable to yourself, and it's easy to maybe let your personal life or distractions, or you're working on the internet, so there's so many fun things to occupy your mind space. So you really need to have a set of what I'm going to do today and what I need to accomplish, bigger picture. So lucky for me, I am friends with a woman named Allison Levine, who actually, since recently, has written a book, which I have here. It's called On the Edge Leadership. And Allison is a mountaineer. She's climbed all 7 of the highest peaks on each continent. Yeah, and trekked to the North and the South Pole. So early on, when I was sort of just maybe on the edge of going out on my own, my husband and I met Allison in Boston for dinner, and she had, at that point, not climbed Everest. She had climbed it, but not hit the summit. So, and for a lot of people that was considered, not a good summit bid. I was proud of her, but there's disappointment around actually not making it to the top. So we were having this conversation around, tolerance for failure and having this mindset of going for it and being strong and, teamwork. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's so much easier for me to be, I've got this little cashmere blanket and, my nice little office. I can make a go of it right here. But, her words of, sometimes you go up and then you get there and you have to come back down and that doesn't work, or you need to go a different path. That really just stuck with me. And, we were just all friends having dinner, and she was more explaining things from a technical standpoint. But that was very motivational to me. And I used to, every morning, before I didn't even have an iPad, or, I don't even know if I had an iPhone yet, I would sit in my bed and I would say, with my cup of coffee, what am I going to accomplish today? Am I going to write a blog post? Am I going to send a new email? Am I going to, find people to tweet or retweet, and I would have a little plan. And before I even opened my email, I would do whatever it was I said I was going to do. And I just did that every single day. And it wasn't fast, but it was steady, and it was a good system for me.
How have you dealt with, and I think this is sort of goes along the lines of the life on the edge or working towards the edge of something new. WordPress is constantly evolving. I mean, you're just working with WordPress means you are putting yourself in a position of chaos. You're literally on the edge all the time. That's not bad, and it's especially not bad once you've been in it for a while and you kind of get the flow of things and you have background knowledge to work with. But nonetheless, it's something you have to account for. So how have you dealt with that sort of reality of an ever-changing platform that sometimes causes you to maybe even change your core business?
That's a really good question. Number one, I think your personality has to be able to be an adapter. You have to be able to say, I'm going to come, or I'm going to be able to onboard that I'm sitting down at my desk and WordPress did an overnight update and things are going to break, and you can't, and mentally you have to be able to handle that, which I know some people like really throws them off. And so if you're suited towards that, then this is good. Or if it's not really your thing, it might not be the best business for you.
How have you, I mean, I know as someone who works from their home office and I've been doing this for years, is, you really have to figure out your own way to have a balance, like a life-work balance, because work, you don't have an office to go home from or to leave to. So there's a lot of things that you have to do to switch modes of thinking, to learn how to relax differently. What does balance look like for you, or have you been able to find it yet?
Well, that's a really good question, and it changes based on, a lot of different things all the time. But for me, I have 3 children, and my oldest is just leaving for college, and they all, now the older 2 can drive, but I was very bookended by their school schedule because they don't take a bus. So, I would drop them in the morning and I would pick them up in the afternoon. So I really knew that in between I had to be super productive. And then, right. And then you have your children, and I have a really awesome husband, and we love to do stuff together. And so, there's the golf, there's the running. I did the running thing for a long time. And I would train for events, and not because I'm like any kind of, believe me, like I'm like the last to finish any finish line, but just like having goals outside. For a while I did mother-daughter knitting, and I'm in a book group, and so your outside community is important, and my oldest is leaving for college, and that's sad, so we want to spend as much time together. And so, kids, I think, keep you balanced.
Let's jump into marketing yourself. Pretty simple question. How do you market yourself?
Well, I have, this blog that I put out there, so I get loads of people that find me through my blog. I am fairly social offline, so I've had lots of business come through people that, are just my friends in everyday life that I come across. I've never paid for marketing, so I can't speak to any of those options.
Sure, and that's fine. I mean, I'm interested in your experience because everybody we talk to is going to have a different one, and so I don't, want to try to ask you to talk about something that you're not familiar with. I want to know what worked for you, because like you said, there's going to be a different solution for almost every different person that's available if they want it. So, and I think that's part of what's really cool about, just this industry in general.
Yeah. So a lot of my blog posts are literally questions that I came up with and then was able to solve. And then through that, I get a lot of people who need like WordPress coaching, or they'll say, I was searching for somebody in Boston and you came up, or I've worked with clients all over the world. So that's like the beauty of Google. And I have a blog post on my site that talks about, what you need to know aside just from being a web designer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
right. So there's some people that just need email, like a MailChimp or an Aweber setup. And most of my clients, I'm a very high touch relationship with them. So most of them stay, and they have a cycle of needing a new website and content updated.
Hmm.
So I'm lucky in that respect. And as you say, success is defined differently for everybody. So maybe what I need to earn or my goals, like for my Eileen Lonergan, are different than
Sure.
goals for
Yeah.
other people or
And I think
our
you touched
elegant
on it
marketplace.
perfectly too, with the fact that you said you wrote a blog post recently about things you need to know besides web design. I mean, for some people, I mentioned this earlier too, some people, that's their whole business is stuff besides web design.
Right.
Even though they're doing that, they're
Right.
using themes like Divi with child themes, and they're swapping content out for people, but their real service and their real value is somewhere else, and it's an avenue. I think that's so cool. Back to the marketing though,
Yeah.
what does your blogging strategy look like? I mean, you don't have to get too specific, but I mean, what are the broad strokes of your blogging strategy?
It's pretty much anything that's interesting to me, I'm guessing will be interesting to other people.
Hey,
So
there you go. Pretty simple.
it's pretty simple. I worked all weekend on a blog post on Periscope
Oh, cool.
because, because I just, I saw an article about it. I put it up in the Divi group saying who's using Periscope, and I got this flurry of really interesting responses. And initially I had said, well, I'm not going to do Periscope because I really and truly am so SEO focused for so many of my clients
Hmm.
that something that evaporates quickly, and I know my children use Snapchat. I'm like, I can't be bothered with Snapchat. Like, what is that all about? But then I thought there's this really cool girl in the Facebook group, Jen, and she's a comedian, and she's doing this sort of cleaning my apartment with my friends over, kind of like a Mark Maron thing, and putting it on Periscope. And
That's cool.
it's so cool. And then you think, well, she's growing an audience.
Yeah.
Nobody's Googling to find comedians in New York cleaning their apartment, like
Right.
that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I mean, marketing is not necessarily, and I think this is a mentality shift that has been happening throughout the entire online, the lifespan of life online, is the idea that marketing is a conversation, and it's a communal conversation, and it doesn't always have a one-to-one correlation with a conversion, but it highly impacts your conversion number in the end.
Yeah.
And so just the idea that, even the way you're concepting content is very much in line with what this kind of stuff that I do. And I recommend people is whatever you're thinking, whatever you're talking about, those are things you should be writing about, because that's what people, not just you, but your community, whatever they're talking about, listening about, those are things you should be writing about, because that's the conversation they're having. Even if that conversation is not the conversation that you want to be having, you have to join it before you can redirect it. And so I love that simplicity. I mean, I think people think that their strategy has to be some highly technical, impressive sounding philosophy, and it doesn't. It can be as simple as, if I were to join a room of people talking and I wanted to talk about something, I'd have to join their conversation first and find a way to redirect. And it's as simple as that.
Right. And I've worked with some big corporate clients, and we had a spreadsheet based on like who's going to write and it was based off of like their conference calendar, and what hashtags we're going to use for different tweets. And I think that's a great system as well. If
You
for
can
me,
certainly
it's
be
like
more intentional, that is for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
But you can't get away from, like, you can't start a hashtag that no one cares about, for instance.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not going to catch on if there's not some kind of narrative behind it, and that narrative is usually only there if it's a conversation that's already taking place.
Right.
But what is on that same note? I mean, speaking of hashtags and things like that, what's your social media strategy? I know you're super active and the founder of the Facebook group. Was that a fluke? Was that something you started on a lark? Was that something intentional? What did that whole thing look like for you?
It was really and truly because I was looking for other people that were, already figuring out the CSS. Remember that little line that was along like the sidebar, like getting rid of that stuff. And I was having a lot of success with those blog posts that I was just putting in my own code that I was figuring out. And so I said, I'm just going to start a Facebook group. Yeah. And I put it on, I had a lot of luck. I think that Nick Roach very early on, maybe I put it in a comment or I tweeted and he retweeted and I got a boon from that. And I remember when it got to 500, I said, like, should we just stop? Should we just like keep it us?
Yeah.
Like, how many people do we need? And then
are you glad that you let it keep growing, or do you what's the environment like there? I know, but you can explain to everybody else.
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled. I think it's incredibly great group of people who are really and truly doing all kinds of interesting things. And there is the common denominator of Divi, because that's why people join. But then, we have people like Jen, who's like doing this whole Periscope thing, who's lending her experience to the group. And we have people who are really, really and truly like out there in the trenches, like, SJ coding. And we have like David Blackman and his partners who are making these themes and putting them on Elegant Marketplace. So suddenly it's the floodgates are open and you really and truly have all this talent and these people putting up these themes all the time, or these websites that they've done it. And you're like, I wish I had thought of that. That's so cool. I need a client that, doesn't want the fixed header or something like that. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
Something non-standard.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to close this this section, what's your one social media blogging visibility marketing tip? Like, what would you say to someone who's having trouble with their visibility in this space?
I would absolutely say go steady Eddie with your blog, because it's every blog post is another window into Google, and that's how people can find you. And go where you like to be. So if you like to be on Pinterest, then create pretty pins around your blog posts and put them there. And go on Twitter and share your tweets. But if you're not really like one to love Instagram, don't worry about it.
Right.
You don't have to be everywhere. Be where you like or where you think. And chances are where you like to be is where your audience will be hanging out.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is, I think you're a great example of this. You're not everywhere, but where you are, you have a presence. And before I met you, before we started talking for this podcast, I heard about you through email with other people that I talked to. So I was hearing about you in a totally different arena, but it was because of your presence in the communities that you were at and how valuable that effort had been to other people. So there you go. All
right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Let's talk services.
Okay.
I noticed that on your website that you actually offer quite a few services. Does that ever become too much at once, or do you have them all sort of integrated into one thing that you do?
You know what? It's good for me because I like learning constantly, and I like, not everybody needs everything. So because it's me, you don't have to have everything. Or because, like you say, we're defining success differently for different people, I don't need to go with everybody to like the top tier package.
Sure. Do you ever find that there's one or two things that most everybody does need?
Well, absolutely everybody needs a website.
Yeah.
Because you just do. It's not an option anymore. So everybody needs a website. I absolutely tell people to have some type of email capture, because your email list is really your gold, because that's who you can market to. And they're already, the whole permission-based thing, they're already saying, I'm interested in you. Yep. So, you don't need 1 million, but if you've got 1,000 that really like you, or even 100, then it's super, super helpful. So
yeah, absolutely. What's your pricing like? And how did you come to, you don't have to give me specific numbers if you don't want to, but are there tiers to pricing? How did you come up with your rates? What's worked for you in that arena?
Yeah, so I've just kind of had an ear to what other people are charging and what I think that the market is worth, or can bear, in terms of how I like amped up. And, like I said, that first site I did, I charged her, I think, $400.
Yep.
And then I was able to say, okay, you know what? It took me like a heck of a long time to build that website. But, as your learning curve is sort of flattened out, then you can become faster, and then your value becomes more.
Do you tend to do a flat rate or hourly?
I tend to do a flat rate because I have done enough sites and enough projects where I know how long it's going to take me.
Sure.
And I spend a lot of time up front on a proposal.
Okay.
So we're very clear about how many pages, what those pages are going to be, how many images, who's supplying the copy. I've written copy for people in the past. And so, if you need me to write it, it's one thing. If you already have it written, it's another thing. And I can just tell based on our early conversations how engaged some people want to be in the process.
That is a perfect segue to talking about clients.
Okay.
Once your marketing's worked, once you have got someone interested in your product, they're like, we're going to buy. What does that onboarding process look like? I mean, you've got your pricing set, they're on board with it, but now you've got to actually deliver a product to them in a timeline where that flat rate's still valuable to you. Because obviously, if it takes 3 months and you only got $1,000 out of them or whatever your number is, it's not going to be worth it. So what's your onboarding and client management process look like?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Like I said, I'm really a high touch, so there's a lot of communication with most of the clients. In my proposal, which then becomes the contract, there is a disclaimer that says, if you do not deliver what I need by, if I'll say, okay, the website building process will take 6 weeks. If it is delayed because you have not delivered the content I need for the site to go live, you are still invoiced the second half of the payment.
Gotcha.
And disclaimer, I have never, ever, ever had anybody say a site isn't launched because you're too slow. It just hasn't happened. So
you haven't had to say that to a customer?
I've never had to say to a client, I'm busy, God forbid something terrible has happened and I can't finish your website and we're behind. Like, I've never been behind. So it's a really safe bet that when I say in 6 weeks, if the site's not done, it's going to be your fault. So people are, and I've had people that have gone over, our 6 weeks or whatever our deadline is. And sometimes I've had to say, okay, here's your bill. And sometimes maybe it'll be another week and it's like, we're all good, or, kind of make that call when you come to it. Or I've said to people, I just had a site that I launched last week where I said, okay, here's the deal. It's just all of these feature creep items have taken place, and we said 10 pages and we're at 14 or 12 or whatever your personal threshold is for going by. How do you want to handle it? Do you want to move to my hourly rate, or do you want another flat fee? And most of the people that I deal with are business people. They're running their own business, so they get it that I'm a business.
And what have you done to work out those terms? I mean, you mentioned you have a contract. Did you go through a lawyer? Did you draw the contract up yourself? Did you use a service like LegalZoom?
I actually just had a conversation with my accountant over what is acceptable and, in my state and for my sort of business. And so he and I had a conversation over, what is acceptable. And honestly, I've had a couple clients where I've just said, actually, don't even pay me. I don't even want to finish. This is just a bad, I'm not going to say that's never happened, but it's much fewer, and it's just those
have you found that
road.
Those situations are at all toxic to your business, where you're just done, this is not working? How have you managed that, and how have you kept it from being a tarnishing effect of any kind? Because I know for me, that's always a concern for me, is I don't know, maybe this is just a personality thing, but I'm always worried, like, all right, I got to be extra patient with this person because I don't want to come off like I'm not willing to work for them. What's that look like for you? I mean, how have you managed that?
I have one category that I won't work with. Should I name it?
Sure, go for it. Yeah. I think it's good to learn these things.
Okay. I absolutely will not take a client who's a lawyer. The worst paying, the worst to get to agree on anything. I've just not had pleasant experiences. And, one night I was at our club and this man asked me what I did and I told him and he said, "Oh man, I need a website. I'm a lawyer." I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't work with lawyers.
What was that conversation like? Was he like, what, you don't work with lawyers? Like, where did that come from?
Well, the funny thing was, he's like, "I promise I am different. I am different. I am so much better than all those other guys. I just need like something so people can get my phone number." And, it's hard. There's money on the table. It's like you're like standing right there next to somebody who lives in your same town. And it's like, you know what? I'm sure you absolutely are a great stand-up guy, but that's just like I said, I'm sure you don't take certain types of cases and neither do I. And it's just.
I have one too. I mean, I think this is going to be different for everybody. Obviously, this is not, just so everybody knows, this is not a recommendation to turn down all lawyers.
Yeah, exactly.
But
exactly.
I have that too. I mean, I don't work with nonprofits unless I can do the project for free because I actually worked full time for a series of nonprofits early on in my life, my professional life, and it was a nightmare, and I didn't enjoy it. And I found that there was a certain mentality to it. Obviously, that's not the same for everybody. There's some people that work at nonprofits and they love it. But I did a number of different kinds of nonprofits, and every one I joined, I loved the cause, and I hated the environment, and I hated the mentality of how they run finances, how they manage their labor, etc. And so for me, that's my group. I don't do nonprofits unless I can just say, this is on me. I like you guys. I'm just gonna gift this to you as in support of your cause.
Right. And honestly, I think that a lot of people starting out, back to like earlier in our conversation, may miss these opportunities to do sites for free because working for a nonprofit is an absolutely, or doing a site for free or for a nonprofit, it's a great cause because they don't have lots of extra money for this. Typically, they're incredibly grateful, and you get something for your portfolio.
Absolutely.
And you know what? People on boards of nonprofits, they're really smart, and they all have their own businesses, and they're grateful, and they're going to be happy to recommend you.
Yep, absolutely. What is so we've talked about payments, talked about, what you charge, how you charge. So how do you actually accept payments? What's that like? I mean, do you invoice and then they use PayPal or Stripe, or do you have some other arrangement set up?
You know what? It can be, I don't use Stripe. I use PayPal because I have clients internationally, and some locally who just are PayPal users. Some just do a bank transfer, or stick a check in the mail. It's kind of, it's
pretty
kind of
open.
Basic, pretty open.
Okay, cool. And do you have techniques that you use? I mean, so we've covered now the whole gamut. I mean, now they encountered your marketing, they bought the product, you've managed the project, you've given it to them, you accepted the payment. Do you now have a technique or techniques that you use for turning one-time customers into subscribers or repeat customers?
Well, a lot of my clients have a blog. So I typically will coach them on how to sign into their website. And, because it's me and I don't have a team, I really feel that and this is a huge controversial topic that you probably could have a whole podcast on. I always give clients access to the back end of their website. And
there are going to be people with a lot of different opinions on that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so that is a can of worms. However, we'll get on Skype like we're doing, we'll share screens, I'll show them how to log in, here's how you can use the basic text editor. As beautifully designed as the back end is for, thank you, Kenny Singh, 95% of the people will say, I'm not going to touch this.
Yeah.
I will come back to you. So, and hopefully they've had a really good experience. And then, we work together on other things. I'll tell them along the way, okay, maybe you're not ready for the newsletter part just yet, but, in 2 months, maybe when the dust is settled, let's come back to that.
Yeah.
And so I try to let them know what their options are, or, let's talk about a social media strategy. And, sometimes, like, especially for people who have a blog, they just need to get the blog post going. And then they'll say, okay, how can I grow my audience?
Right.
Right. So I think it's important to let them know, maybe through like a little breadcrumbs or a follow up when you're done, here's
some other stuff I can help you out with when you're ready for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So speaking of like different things that you can do and different tools that you might use to do that, well, let's talk tools of the trade. Aside from Divi, what are some other must-have tools and resources that you put to use on a regular basis?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am a huge, huge fan of Canva.
I'm not familiar. What is Canva?
Okay, so Canva is like Photoshop, but it's like in the cloud. It's online. Cool. So you sign into their platform, and just last week they have a premium version that you can pay for. So for example, if we put out, like for Elegant Marketplace, we put out a blog post, and we always have some kind of graphic to go with the post. So I can make something for Pinterest, and then, click a button, it'll resize it for Twitter, for Facebook.
Whoa.
I know.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It's so cool. And they have elements that you can pay for within Canva if you want certain layouts or designs or pictures. Or, you can use your own stock of stuff that's free. I use Creative Market I think it's Tuesday. They come out with six free items. I look at what they are. If I like them, I'll download them and I'll save them to use for another time.
Oh, cool.
So I have a whole library there. And then I use Unsplash because...
Yep, I love their images.
I know. Aren't they beautiful? They're great. So those are my like free things, even though I just upgraded to Canva.
Oh, great. And is there like a Divi compatible plugin that you've found that you've really liked? I mean, it doesn't have to be Divi compatible exclusively, but since you're using Divi a lot, have you found there's like a plugin or two that you're all about all the time?
Yeah, like the Monarch and Bloom are so pretty.
Well, of course, yeah.
Right? So those are great. And then there's a premium Divi plugin that I use called Divi Booster.
Okay, I've heard that. That's for now. Here's what I don't know, because I haven't used Divi Booster. I've seen a lot of people reference it. It's primarily for CSS edits. Is that correct? Like for not having to do CSS edits. For not having to do CSS edits,
it's great. And then also if you want additional social media plugins. So if you want Instagram, LinkedIn, you can just put your URL and those will show up on the website.
Is this plugin as useful as it once was, given all the updates with 2.4, or is it serve a different niche than that update addressed?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question, and I actually have a draft of a blog post that I haven't finished on what I'm still using the booster for.
Oh, okay.
And but it absolutely is still relevant. There are, the social media is just like a quick one that comes to mind. Also, so.
Great, awesome. Yeah. And is there any tool or resource that you haven't tried yet, but you're interested in, and you want to explore it, and you'd recommend, or you'd invite other people in the community to maybe talk about in the comments of this?
Yeah, I haven't yet because I just haven't had a project on my plate. I haven't used the footer plugin by David Blackman and the people over at
I got to play around with that.
Yeah.
That's a great tool.
Isn't it so great?
Yeah.
I've done some like mock-ups and one of my early posts that's gotten a load of hits is how to edit the Divi footer. Mm-hmm. And even with the Booster plugin, and originally, you had to go into your PHP and make some edits, which is nerve-wracking for some people, and I understand that. And with the Booster, you can just put in the HTML, which...
or you can use the WYSIWYG, which is cool too. We're actually going to feature that plugin. David's one of the next guests, and we're going to feature that plugin as the plugin highlight because it's a really convenient tool, and I think it fits the general Divi audience too. It's just very in the same tradition as the Divi Builder. It's super accessible, super easy to use, and cool tool.
Yeah.
We've covered a ton of ground today.
No, sorry. A lot of
no, it's so good. It's so
Okay.
good. I'm so glad that you've been willing to dive into all these different topics. I mean, I've been throwing questions at you left and right, and you fielded all of them gracefully, all of them wonderfully. If you were to pick one, idea or tip or thought that you wanted someone to walk away from this, conversation with, we probably, who knows how many people are going to see this episode. I don't know where they're all going to be at, but I would imagine a lot of them are going to be either beginners or just it's the same user category as Divi in general. So whether it's beginners, intermediate, whatever, what thought would you like them to walk away from on this theme of successful solopreneurship?
Yeah. Number one, you can absolutely do it. There is like nothing stopping anyone from making it happen. And, when I first saw that book, The $100 Startup, I was like, oh, damn it. Like I did that,
I could have wrote that book.
Oh, I should have missed opportunity. So I would say you absolutely can do it. There's lots and lots of communities out there. For me, strategic alliances have been so helpful. The guys from Expand to Web were really, really helpful. We're all still great friends because they're so entrepreneurial. They're doing a little bit sort of different things than what I'm doing right now. And, Andrew and David as business partners in Elegant Marketplace, like I love that. And they are really helpful in where my weaknesses are. And I like to think that I give them, a positive element to their business, or us as a team. So I would say don't be afraid to reach out and form different alliances and ask people for help. And I think that the community really and truly is helpful. You are not alone, even though you're sitting in your home office. And be professional. That's the other thing. Don't go to work in your sweatpants every day or your pajamas or it is a business and you are running it and you need to treat it as so. And if you have to spend some money on an accountant or a lawyer or business cards, then you should take it seriously.
Wow, great advice. And thank you once again, Eileen, for taking the time to share with us today. Now, before we wrap up, there are a few Elegant Themes product updates to announce. Let's check it out. In case you didn't catch the latest sneak peek blog post over at the Elegant Themes blog, there's been an update to the Divi production timeline. Divi 2.5, not the Divi Builder plugin, will be the next product release for Elegant Themes. Why the change? Well, it turns out that Divi 2.5 and the Divi Builder are being developed in unison. The final updates being released in Divi 2.5 will complete the Divi Builder framework that the plugin and all future Elegant Themes will be running. What this means is that from this release on, every Divi website, whether it's the latest version of the Divi theme itself or a third-party theme using the Divi Builder, will have the same code base at their core and allow users to switch between them effortlessly. This will also pave the way for the release and seamless integration of the much-anticipated magazine theme Extra into the Elegant Themes family. So what kind of features and upgrades can we expect to see in Divi 2.5? Well, in addition to standard bug fixes and minor improvements across the board, there are 3 areas in which the Divi Builder in particular will be improved. The first is by adding new right-click and hotkey commands that make working with the builder much faster. Second, the addition of the Divi role editor will allow you to set user permissions for the Divi Builder. This will keep overeager clients and perhaps even their users from messing with the builder elements that you worked hard to make perfect the first time around. And finally, a new builder preview mode will allow you to view changes within the builder before you save and exit the module that you're working on. So when will Divi 2.5 and these awesome new features be released? As of this recording, it looks like another 2 weeks, probably the first week of September. And once Divi 2.5 is released, the builder will be coming just a few weeks after that, as soon as its beta testing can be completed. So hang in there, we've got a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching or listening to Elegant Themes Divi Nation. Coming up next week, our first installment of This Week in WordPress, our first plugin highlight, and our first Divi Design Challenge. We'll also be talking with David Blackman of Aspen Studios about unlocking the good life with Divi. Were you unhappy with the sales job?
Looking back on it now, I would say yes. I was unhappy and I didn't know it. It wasn't, I did not have the passion that I have now for what I'm doing.
Thanks again, and see you next week.